Hi everyone, welcome to today's session on Vulnerability Assessment and Penetration Testing or VAPT. If you have ever wondered how organizations identify and fix security loopholes, you are in the right place. This is Santuri Mahendran and you are watching Cybersecurity Learners, your go-to channel for cybersecurity insights and knowledge. The agenda. Before we dive into the details, let me give you a quick overview of what we will cover in today's session. Introduction to VAPT. We will start by understanding what VAPT is and why it's so important. Difference between VA and PT. I will explain how these two processes differ and how they work together. Types of VAPT. We will explore the various types of testing, including network, web application, mobile, and more. VAPT process. I will walk you through a step by step breakdown of how VAPT is conducted along with tools used. Real life cyber attack cases. To make things relatable, we will discuss real world examples where VAPT would have made a difference. Then, best practices and effective VAPT. I will share tips to ensure your VAPT process is as efficient and impactful as possible. And then, common questions and answers. Finally, we will address some frequently asked questions about VAPT. So stay tuned as we unravel each of these topics in detail. Introduction. Let's begin by the introduction to VAPT. What is VAPT? VAPT stands for Vulnerability Assessment and Penetration Testing. It's a combination of two critical processes used in cybersecurity. The first process is vulnerability assessment, which focuses on identifying security weaknesses in systems, applications, or networks. Think of it as creating a checklist of all the potential vulnerabilities that attackers could exploit. The second process is penetration testing, which goes one step further. It involves exploiting those identified weaknesses to understand the risks and potential impact if an attacker were to take advantage of them. So essentially, VAPT is like a two-step process. First, you identify the weak spots and then you test how far those weak spots can be exploited. Together, these processes help organizations understand their security posture and take steps to protect themselves from real world attacks. Now, let's talk about why VAPT is important. It is crucial for organizations to identify, understand, and mitigate security risks in their IT infrastructure. Here's why it plays a vital role. Number one, it identifies security weaknesses. Here, the objective is to find vulnerabilities in systems, networks, and applications. The reason is proactively identifying weaknesses allows organization to fix them before attackers exploit them. And the example for this is discovering and patching an outdated software version vulnerable to remote code execution. Point number two is it prevents data breaches. Importance is data breaches can lead to significant financial, reputational, and legal consequences. So, role of VAPT here is to simulate potential attacks to uncover weaknesses that could result in data theft or compromise. Example for this is testing for insecure APIs that may expose sensitive customer information. And the third point comes is it ensures compliance and regulation. The requirement for this is many standards and regulations mandate regular security testings, including GDPR, called as General Data Protection Regulation, PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, ISO 27001, Information Security Management System. So, role of VAPT here is it helps organizations meet this compliance requirement by providing necessary reports and assessments. And the fourth one is cost effective in long run. It proactive mitigation. Fixing vulnerabilities before an attack is less expensive than dealing with that aftermath of a breach. So example for this would be preventing ransomware attacks by addressing weak endpoints during VAPT. This slide is the continuation of the previous one, talking about the importance of VAPT. So the fifth one is it builds customer trust. Here, customer expects the data to be secure. So VAPT contribution in that it demonstrates the organization's commitment to cybersecurity, enhancing trust and confidence. It protects brand reputation. A single cyber attack can tarnish a company's reputation, so it's a proactive approach. Conducting regular VAPT reduces the likelihood of successful attacks and associated PR crises. The seventh point is it evaluates real world security posture. Penetration testing mimics real world attack scenarios to measure how well systems can withstand them. So the outcome would be provides a realistic assessment of the organization's security readiness. And the eighth point is protects against emerging threats. In the dynamic threat landscape, cyber threats evolve constantly. So the role of VAPT here would be it helps organizations stay ahead of emerging vulnerabilities and attack vectors. And some other benefits include it increases awareness across teams. Internal benefits like engages IT and security teams in understanding vulnerabilities and implementing mitigation strategies. The result would be it builds a culture of security awareness within the organization. And one more point would be tailored security recommendation. Output of VAPT provide customized actionable steps to address identified vulnerabilities. So the benefit would be aligns security improvements with the organization's specific needs. Next, let's clarify the difference between VA and PT. While both are essential parts of VAPT, they serve different purposes. Let's take a closer look at the differences between VA and PT. To make it easy, let's break it down using this table. So the objective is VA focuses on identifying weaknesses in systems, applications, or networks. It's like creating a list of all the potential vulnerabilities that could be exploited. And PT goes a step further to actively exploit those vulnerabilities and determine their real world impact. Next point is the approach. VA is a passive process that uses automated tools to scan and report vulnerabilities. It's all about breadth, covering as much ground as possible. PT, on the other hand, is an active process. It uses both manual and automated techniques to simulate real world attacks, diving deeper into specific vulnerability. So the output would be the result of VA is a list of vulnerabilities ranked by the severity, which provides a snapshot of security issues. The output of PT is a demonstration of exploitability, especially essentially a report showing which vulnerability can be exploited and their potential impact. And the fourth point is the time and cost. VA is generally faster and more cost effective since it relies on the automated tools. PT requires more time and resources because it involves detailed manual testing and analysis. The use case would be VA is great for regular health checks to identify and prioritize vulnerabilities. PT is ideal for in-depth security assessments where you want to know the actual risks and how an attacker might exploit your system. In summary, VA gives you a broad view overview of vulnerabilities while PT shows you the real world risks by actively testing those vulnerabilities. Both are crucial and work hand in hand to strengthen an organization's security. Types of VAPT. VAPT can be applied to different areas of an organization's infrastructure. Let me break it down for you. Number one, network VAPT. This tests internal and external networks for vulnerabilities. Number two, Web Application VAPT. It focuses on web applications, especially OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities like SQL injection and cross-site scripting. Number three, Mobile Application VAPT ensures mobile apps are secure across different platforms like iOS and Android. Number four is Cloud Security VAPT examines cloud environments for security gaps. Then comes fifth, API security testing, validates the security of API endpoints. Then six, wireless network VAPT, and secures wireless networks like Wi-Fi. Then comes IoT and embedded devices VAPT. It protects Internet of Things devices and embedded systems. Each type targets specific areas of risk, ensuring comprehensive coverage of an organization's security landscape. Let's go through the VAPT process step by step. Number one is planning and scoping. This is where we define the goals, scope, and the rules of engagement for the testing. For example, deciding whether to test internal networks, external networks, or both. Number two is information gathering, which can be also called as reconnaissance. Here we collect data about the target using passive methods like Google Dockings and active methods like Nmap. Next comes scanning. This step involves using tools like Nessus or OpenWasp to identify vulnerabilities in the target system. Then comes the exploitation part. Once the vulnerabilities are identified, we exploit them using tools like Metasploit to assess the actual risk. And then comes post exploitation. This step evaluates what an attacker would achieve after exploitation, such as stealing data or escalating privileges. Next and the last is the report writing. Finally, we document our findings in a structured report, highlighting risks and providing remediation recommendations. Each of these steps is crucial for ensuring the effectiveness of VAPT. Let's start with the first step of VAPT process, planning and scoping. This step is absolutely critical because it lays the foundation for the entire engagement. Objective is the primary goal here is to define the goals, boundaries, and expectations from the VAPT. Without clear planning, there's a risk of miscommunication or missing critical areas. Here, the action to take is identify the assets to be tested. For example, will we be testing web application, networks, or APIs, or something else? This step ensures we focus on right targets. Then agree on the type of test. Decide whether it will be a black box test where no prior knowledge of the system is provided, a white box test where complete knowledge of the system is shared, or a gray box test where a mix of both is shared. Next one is to determine the scope. Clearly define whether the testing will focus on internal systems, external systems, or cloud environments. Then define the rules of engagement. Establish legal and operational constraints. For instance, define what's allowed and what is not during the test. This avoids conflicts and ensures compliance with regulation, clarity, transparency, minimized risk, legal protection, and efficient testing. Then examples of rules of engagement in VAPT are like scope, test the company's public-facing website but exclude internal HR systems, conduct testing between 2 a.m. and 6 p.m. to avoid disrupting users. Then use approved tools like Nessus or Burbsue. Do not use unapproved or experimental tools. Immediately halt testing and inform the client if critical services are affected. Then why it is important, planning and scoping, why it is important. Proper planning ensures everyone is on the same page. It eliminates ambiguity, aligns the testing with the organization's goals, and avoids wasting time or resources. For example, imagine you are tasked with testing an e-commerce site. If you don't clearly define whether the scope includes internal databases or just the public facing website, you could miss crucial vulnerabilities or overstep boundaries. So, planning and scoping aren't just a formality, they are the backbone of a successful VAPT engagement. Now let's move on to the second step in the VAPT process, that is information gathering, also known as reconnaissance. This phase is all about collecting as much data as possible about the target to identify potential attack surfaces. The objective here is the goal here is to gather information that can help stimulate real world attack scenarios effectively. So, the actions to be taken here is to perform passive reconnaissance. This involves gathering publicly available data without interacting with target system. Examples include using whois records to get domain information, checking DNS records, analyzing data from social engineering or leaked documents. Next one is to perform active reconnaissance. This involves interacting with target system to collect more specific information. Examples include using tools like Nmap to scan for open ports and services, and then identifying software versions to look for vulnerabilities. Next one is the tools to use is common tools that are used during this phase include Nmap for network scanning, Shodan to map the target's internet-facing devices, Google Dockings for finding sensitive information indexed by search engine. Then why this step is important? Accurate and thorough reconnaissance is crucial because it lays the groundwork for the next phases of the APT. If you miss key details here, your testing might overlook critical vulnerabilities. For example, imagine you are testing a web application. Passive reconnaissance might reveal that the application is running an outdated version of a framework, while active reconnaissance might confirm that this version is vulnerable to a known exploit. This phase is like creating a blueprint of the target, giving you a detailed map of where to focus your testing efforts. Next, let's dive into the third step of VAPT process, that is scanning. This phase focuses on identifying security weaknesses and vulnerabilities in the target system. The objective. The goal of scanning is to uncover potential vulnerabilities that attackers could exploit. It provides a comprehensive picture of the system security posture. Actions to take here is use automated tools like Nessus, OpenWasp, Burp or Nikto, and then perform port scanning using Nmap, then conduct vulnerability scanning. Like this involves scanning the system for known vulnerabilities using databases like CVE. It helps pinpoint specific weaknesses that could be exploited. Then why it's important? Scanning is critical because it provides a baseline for the next step, exploitation. By identifying vulnerabilities, you can prioritize which areas to test further. For example, a vulnerability scan might reveal that a system is running an outdated web server version that is vulnerable to remote code execution. This information helps you to focus your understanding your testing efforts effectively. So, when we talk about the real life example, you can just imagine scanning a network and discovering an open port running an old version of SSH. This might not seem alarming initially, but further analysis could reveal it's susceptible to brute force attacks. Without this scanning phase, such vulnerabilities could go unnoticed. In summary, scanning is like shining a light into every corner of the system to uncover hidden risks. It sets the stage for more targeted testing in the next phase. Let's move on to the fourth step in the VAPT process, that is exploitation. This is where we simulate real world attacks to test the vulnerabilities identified in the previous phase. Objective here is the primary goal of exploitation is to understand the real world risk of vulnerabilities by attempting to exploit them. This step demonstrates the impact an attacker could achieve. So the actions to take here are we try to manually exploit vulnerabilities. We use tools like Metasploit, SQL Map, or custom scripts to exploit the identified weaknesses. This step tests vulnerabilities like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and more. Then the next part, what we do is test for OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. This focuses on common vulnerabilities such as SQL injection, where malicious SQL queries are used to manipulate database, cross-site scripting, injecting scripts into web pages viewed by others, broken authentication, exploiting weaknesses in user authentication systems, security misconfiguration, exploiting improper system settings, and then we also perform privilege escalation here, test whether you can gain higher level access to the system after initial exploitation. So why this step is important? Exploitation demonstrates how attackers can turn theoretical risks into real-world damage. It provides clear evidence of the potential impact on systems, data, and network. So we can understand this with an example. For instance, let's say you identified an SQL injection vulnerability during scanning. In this phase, you would exploit it to see if you can access sensitive data like usernames, passwords, or financial records. This helps the organization understand the severity of the issues and prioritize fixing it. The key takeaway here would be while scanning identifies vulnerabilities, exploitation answers the critical question, what can an attacker actually achieve with these vulnerabilities? It's not just about finding the problem, it's about demonstrating the impact, which is vital for prioritizing fixes and understanding risks. Let's move to the fifth step in the VAPT process, that is post exploitation. This phase evaluates the consequences of successful exploitation and assesses what an attacker could do after gaining objective. So, the main goal of post exploitation is to understand the potential impact and persistence of an attack. It helps organizations prioritize the response and recovery strategies. So the action to take here, first one, to analyze the impact of exploitation. Determine what an attacker could achieve after exploiting a vulnerability. For example, could they access sensitive data? Could they spread across the network? Could they disrupt services or steal intellectual property? The second action is to assess persistence mechanism. Investigate whether an attacker could maintain access using backdoors. Backdoors means hidden entry points into the systems, then privilege escalation, gaining higher level access to control more resources. And the third part would be to document the overall impact, record the systems, data, or network areas that were compromised, highlight the potential business risks such as financial loss, reputational damage, or legal implications. Then why this phase is important? Understanding post-exploitation scenarios helps organizations see the full picture of the potential breach. It's not just about whether an attacker could get in, but what they could do after gaining access. So we can understand this with an example. Imagine an attacker exploits a vulnerability to access a server. Post-exploitation analysis might reveal that they can move laterally to access sensitive databases or create backdoors to re-enter later. This shows the organization how deep the compromise could go if vulnerabilities are not addressed properly. So the key takeaway would be post-exploitation is about answering critical questions like what's the worst case scenario if this vulnerability is exploited? How can we prevent attackers from maintaining control or causing further damage? This step is essential for developing effective remediation and recovery plans, ensuring the organization is prepared to mitigate risk swiftly and effectively. Finally, let's talk about the last step in the VAT process, reporting. This step is crucial because it translates all the technical findings into actionable insights for stakeholders. The goal of reporting is to present the findings in a structured format that is understandable to both technical and non-technical audience. This ensures everyone knows what vulnerabilities exist and how to address them. Action to take here. Number one is to provide an executive summary. This is a high level overview of non technical stakeholder like manager or executives. It focuses on the overall risks and their potential business impact. For example, you might say we identified critical vulnerabilities that could lead to unauthorized access to sensitive customer data. Then the second part is include a technical report. This section is detailed and aimed at technical teams. It includes a list of vulnerabilities identified, the risk classification like critical, high, medium, or low, then detailed explanation of how they were exploited and the potential impact. The third point is provide remediation recommendations like include step-by-step guidance on how to fix the identified vulnerabilities. For example, update the web server to the latest version to patch the identified SQL injection weaknesses. Then comes fourth point is to perform post-fix validation. After fixes are implemented, verify that the vulnerabilities have been successfully remediated. This ensures the fixes are effective and that no new issues were introduced. Then, why it is important? The report serves as a roadmap for improving security. It not only helps the organization understand what went wrong, but also guides them in fixing the issues and preventing future attacks. So, the key takeaway here, a well structured report bridges the gap between identifying vulnerabilities and taking action. It empowers organizations to strengthen the security posture effectively and ensures the VAPT engagement delivers maximum value. Now, let's look at some real life cyber attack case studies to understand the devastating impact of security breaches and how VAPT could have helped prevent them. Number one is Equifax data breach in 2017. What happened? An unpatched vulnerability in Apache Struts, a web application framework, exposed sensitive data of 147 million users. Impact is this breach included social security numbers, birth dates, and addresses, critical personal information. The key lesson to learn here is regular vulnerability assessments could have identified this unpatched software and prevented this breach. Next one is SolarWinds hack, which happened in 2020. What happened here is a sophisticated supply chain attack where attackers inserted malware into SolarWinds Orient software updates. Impact was the breach affected major corporations and US government agencies, compromising highly sensitive data. The key lesson to learn here is penetration testing could have helped identify how attackers bypassed defenses, enabling better prevention strategies. And the number third is Bangladesh bank heist in 2016. What happened? Hackers exploited weak security measures in the international banking network used for transferring funds. Impact was they fraudulently transferred $81 million to accounts in the Philippines. Discovery How it was discovered is the breach was uncovered only when a printer malfunctioned and failed to print the transaction logs. The key lesson to take over is comprehensive security testing could have revealed these weaknesses before they were exploited. So, the takeaway from all these attacks are these examples highlight how vulnerabilities, if not addressed, can lead to catastrophic consequences. Regular VAPT practices can uncover these issues early, reducing the risk of large scale breaches. I have added these links in the resource section for further reading. Please go through that. And you can Google to learn many more such kind of attacks. Next part is deliverables from VAPT. The deliverables from VAPT process are crucial as they provide actionable insights and help organizations improve their security posture. Here's an in-depth breakdown. First is comprehensive VAPT report. It gives the overview of the assessment. It's a summary of objectives, scope, and methodologies used during the VAPT exercise. The findings which it includes are detailed documentation of the vulnerabilities identified, categorized based on severity levels like critical, high, medium, and low. And it gives the exploitation details as information on vulnerabilities that were exploited during penetration testings, demonstrating their impact. Next point is the risk assessment matrix. It's a visual representation showing the severity and likelihood of each vulnerability. It helps prioritize remediation efforts, often presented as a heat map or table. The third one, it talks about the proof of concept called as POC. It's evidence of exploits, screenshots, logs, or other data showing successful exploitation, demonstrates the feasibility and impact of identified vulnerabilities. Example is showing unauthorized access to a critical database due to SQL injection. And the fourth point, which can be taken from this, is recommendation for mitigation. It's a detailed and actionable steps to remediate each identified vulnerability. It includes technical fixes like patching software, changing configuration, process improvements like updating policies, training staff, etc. And then it aligns with best practices and compliance standards. Next one is compliance gap analysis. It identifies gaps in adherence to industry standards and regulations such as PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, and ISO 27001, Information Security Management, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. It suggests measures to address these gaps, and it also helps to write the executive summary. It's like a non-technical overview designed for stakeholders and decision makers. It focuses on the business impact of vulnerabilities and the benefits of mitigation, uses simplified language and visuals like graph, chart for easy understanding. Then comes the detailed remediation plan. It prioritizes a roadmap for advertising vulnerabilities based on severity, potential impact on business operation. Then it also helps to timeline recommendation for resolving issues, critical issues within 7 days. Then comes the post-assessment support. It gives the post-assessment support like assistance with implementing remediation steps, verification testing to confirm that vulnerabilities have been fixed, and continuous monitoring and recommendations for future improvements. Then it contains a summary of tools and methodologies used, list of tools and frameworks used for assessments like VERBSUIT, NESSES, etc. Then the description of testing methodology, what kind of methods are used like black box, gray box, or white box. Then it also includes the legal and ethical compliance statement, like confirms that the VAPT was conducted within legal and ethical boundaries, and the documents any agreements such as non-disclosure clauses to ensure data confidentiality. So the importance of deliverables are it ensures clarity and transparency between the service provider and the client, empowers organization to address vulnerabilities effectively, acts as a benchmark for future security assessments. Now, to ensure effective VAPT, there are some best practices. Perform regular VAPT. This helps organizations stay updated with the latest threats. Prioritize critical vulnerabilities. Focus on fixing the most impactful risks first. Follow security standards. Adhering to standards like ISO 27001 or PCI DSS ensures consistency and quality. Collaborate across teams. Security is a team effort. Ensure IT and security teams work together to address vulnerabilities. By following these practices, organizations can significantly improve their security posture. To wrap up things, here are some valuable resources to read that will deepen your understanding of VAPT and related topics. Now, the first link, Qualisec's Complete Guide to VAPT 2023. It's a comprehensive VAPT guide. This is an excellent resource for understanding the fundamentals of VAPT along with the practical insights and latest trends. And next link is from GitHub VAPT repository. This repository includes various tools, scripts, and resources you can use for a VAPT process. And then uh, I have included the three case studies that we already spoke in our early slides. And then here is a link is also included for WASP Web Security Testing Guide. This guide provides a structured approach to testing web application security, covering best practices and technologies. So these resources are incredibly helpful for both beginners and experienced professionals looking to refine their VAPT skills. They provide a mix of theoretical knowledge and practical tools, which is essential for staying ahead in cybersecurity field. Make sure to explore these links and continue building your expertise in vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. Now let me address about some common questions related to VAPT. There are many questions. You can check out all these questions Googling, but here are a few I thought which would be necessary, which would be good to know. The first one is how often should VAPT be conducted? So the answer for this is VAPT should be performed annually or biannually and other after major changes to the IT infrastructure. The next question is, can it guarantee 100% security? Then the answer for that is no. While VAPT reduces risk, no solutions can guarantee complete security due to evolving cyber threats. Next is, what are common challenges during VAPT? So the common challenges would be incomplete scoping, insufficient knowledge of the infrastructure, and false positive in the vulnerability scans. Remember, VAPT is about reducing risks and staying prepared, not eliminating threats entirely. So, the final conclusion is in today's digital era where cyber attacks are increasingly sophisticated, VAPT serves as a critical tool to ensure an organization's systems, networks, and applications are secure. Regular VAPT assessments not only mitigate risks but also demonstrate a proactive commitment to cybersecurity. That's all for today's video. If you found this session helpful, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Thank you.